Hi everyone! Today I'm going to go over some of the tricks and techniques and colors I use to draw this hair realistically using Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. So the first thing you want to do is have an accurate sketch, whether that be through grid method, transfer, tracing, or freehand. Right now I'm just darkening my lines so that you can see them. So I start out with a dark brown. You can use any dark brown at this point, and I'm using Walnut from the Faber-Castell Polychromos set to start the hair. And I'm focusing on one section at a time, and I'm going in with a very light hand, and I'm making strokes going in the direction of the hair. So as I do each section, I'm focusing on that particular section's colors in my reference photo to determine what colors I'll use. And I compare those color swatches to the colors in my reference by holding them up against the photo. Once I decide what colors I'm going to use, I then focus on the direction of the hair as well as where my highlights are going to be, because the highlights are very important in making the hair look three-dimensional. Most of the time the highlights are somewhere in the middle of the section, and so I work from either end of the section making strokes towards the highlight. Some of the strokes can make their way through the highlight to add texture, but my main focus is on the areas around the highlight. Once I am ready to work on the highlighted areas, I use my lightest color in the highlighted area and gradually build up that color. I then use a white pencil that is wax-based like Prismacolor or a Luminance white pencil to blend and lighten the area up more if needed. You can use the white pencil that comes with the Faber-Castell Polychromos set, which is oil-based, but I would use it gently to blend the colors and repeat the process of adding your colors and then go over it with your white pencil, gradually adding pressure each time. So you'll notice that some of the sections of hair look more black while others look more brown, and that's just what I picked up from my reference photo. So for the brown areas, I used a variety of colors, mostly browns, but also some reds like Caput Mortuum and burnt sienna. I also used lighter browns like Bistre, medium browns like Walnut, and dark browns like dark Sepia. Having a wide range of colors will help in the realism because you really want to have a range of values that will make up your lights, darks, and your midtones. For the black or the really dark sections, I'm using Paynes Gray and Indigo Blue to lay down a foundation. This is because I'm trying to avoid using only black in those areas because I don't want those areas to look flat. So in order to avoid this, I'm adding a layer of blues under the black and then using my black as a darkening tool for that color. I could have used dark sepia or a dark brown as my first layer rather than blue since her hair is brown, and that seems like the obvious choice. But instead I chose blue because the highlights are blue in my picture. And this will make the transition or my gradients much easier to accomplish, and when I use my white pencil to blend, the white pencil will pick up some of the blues rather than mixing browns and blues together, which will not make for a very pretty piece. So if you're not sure what your undertone should be, try looking at the highlights. For the highlighted areas in the darker sections, I use dark indigo for the majority of the highlight and Paynes Gray as a transitional color from the black to the highlight. So for the last two sections of hair, you can really see how my process works. So the first thing I do is I try to get a sense of the direction of the hair by using a dark blue pencil and adding strokes in the direction of the hair. I then focus on the areas that are not my highlight and continue making strokes, adding layers using dark blue and black. I also have a light layer of dark blue in the highlighted areas, and I use my white Luminance pencil to go over the highlighted area to blend, and I repeat the process of adding hair-like strokes in the direction of the hair. I then darken areas with my black pencil, and these are areas that in my reference photo I can't see any individual hairs, so it's very dark and almost completely black. Then I go back and forth between my white pencil, making some strokes with the white pencil going from the highlight into the darker areas to add more texture, and my dark blue and black pencil going into the highlighted area. So it's a back and forth routine, and I do this until I'm happy with it. I also darken the highlighted area with some dark indigo if the highlight is too bright. And that's basically my process for all the sections of hair. After I'm done, I go back and darken any areas that need darkening, and I brighten any areas that need to be lighter. I also add some flyaways, which really adds to the realism. So for the ribbon, I use several different blues, again making sure I have a color for each value. I use sky blue as my lightest color, Indanthrone Blue and dark indigo for my midtones, and Paynes Gray with black for my shadows. Later I use cold gray 3 over the sky blue to tone down the brightness of that blue. I also used it for burnishing most of the ribbon. And just like the hair, I did the ribbon in sections so I could focus on the lines and shapes within the ribbon to give it movement. Otherwise, it'll look flat if I just color it in. After I establish my shapes within the ribbon and darken the areas that need to be dark, I color in the rest of the ribbon with sky blue, and I keep layering using my white pencil to blend. So as I move on to the next section of the ribbon, I'm doing the same thing. I'm identifying any shapes and coloring them in with my darker color, which in this case is Paynes Gray, and then I'm going over those same areas with dark indigo before coloring in the rest of the ribbon with my light blue color. And I keep layering using my white pencil to blend until it looks smooth. I also have a piece of paper under my hand, and that's because I don't want to smudge my work, especially since my hand wants to rest on the darkest parts of my piece. So I'm paying close attention to my reference photo because I really want to make sure that I get the highlights in the right place as well as the shadows. If I don't, the ribbon will not look right. So she has pretty fair skin, which in my opinion can be very challenging, but I used burnt ochre for the crease of the ear, and I used light flesh and cinnamon, and I usually add a little bit of bistre to those colors to tone down the pink and make it more of a neutral skin color. I also used brown ochre 10% and 50% from the Caran Luminance set, which is not available in the Faber-Castell Polychromo set, but you could probably use burnt ochre and some ivory or a yellow to achieve the same color. I then started adding strands of hair that are coming down from her ear, and I used the same colors I did for her ear for her neck, only in the darker areas of the neck I used more browns like brown ochre 50%. So for her collar, I had to figure out how I was going to make it look translucent. The way I did that is by studying the color of each section of the collar. So her collar is basically the same color as her bow, maybe a little darker, and her skin that we can see through the collar is also darker because there's shadow. So not only do I have to add the blue of the collar, but I have to add the skin tone underneath that is in shadow. Because of this, there seemed to be more reds in that section, so I used Venetian red along with a little Indian red with the blues that I was using for the collar. So after I did the first big section of the collar, I worked on the other ear, and then I started adding loose strands and flyaways on her neck and around her ears. And I'm using dark browns and light brown colors so that it looks as though some of the strands are closer and some are wispier and further away. For the rest of her collar, I'm just identifying lines and shapes before coloring everything in. And for the other big section of her collar that we can see through, the light source is hitting that area and therefore it's much lighter. So I used the same blues with a light hand, and instead of those darker reds, I went with the same colors I used for her ears and her neck, which were light flesh and cinnamon. There's also a cast shadow from the collar itself where I used bistre. And so after everything is done, I go in with my white luminance pencil to add flyaways within the hair and add any other finishing touches. If you like this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope that this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.